Our intent is to bring city, county, elected officials, community-based organizations, and community to the table to have conversations around what these issues are, what are we doing that's working, what do we need more of, and then to really give you some actionable items that you can take with you after this evening to really make a difference in community around this specific topic. I want to introduce Molly, my partner in crime, my co-partner in crime. Molly is the Santa Barbara Public Library Services Manager, and she's also somebody who has a lot of direct contact with our unhoused population and has been a big advocate around solutions for supporting this topic around housing equity. So Molly's going to lead us through this discussion.
Thank you, Christy, and thank all of you for being here. So we're going to roll right in and get started because we all know that this is one of the most important issues facing our community, and we need all of us to get together to find solutions to address both the needs of people who are currently unhoused and everybody in danger of losing their housing here in Santa Barbara. So first, I'm going to start off and introduce Lucille Boss. She comes to us with lots of experience on this issue. She's currently works for the County of Santa Barbara as the Encampment Response Coordinator, but I can tell you that that title doesn't do her work justice. So she has a lot of experience in navigating these issues. And with that, we're going to get started. So our question for you today is, while the pandemic exacerbated the housing crisis and disproportionately impacted the unhoused population, there is currently more funding than ever before and closer collaboration between agencies to address housing issues. What are some recent successes that we have achieved locally, and how can we maintain this momentum and create more equitable pathways to housing for our community?
All right. Thank you, Molly, and thank you to DEM Women for hosting this, and I just really appreciate folks being open to the conversation. I'll bring us back to March 2020, so when the world shut down and we all went into our homes with our safe beds, with our warm meals, with our showers, with access to bathrooms, with access to running water. Our unhoused community didn't have any of that. Many of them were going to gyms for showers, to store their items, to shower before they went into work, to make kind of their minimal income. The meal shares all shut down, so people who are unhoused really didn't have access to anything. Fortunately, we had that influx of funding really start up, but we also had great leadership in our county and among our cities and our partner agencies who said, whatever it takes, we're going to make sure that people are fed, that they are sheltered, that their medical needs are attended to. So I just want to, it seems like that was so long ago, and it really was, but I just want to really remind us of how tough the situation was back in March 2020. And you mentioned the influx of funding. And I'll say there was more funding than ever before. It was one time, and it was really heavily prescribed funding. So often what we're still doing is when we have a need, it's taking several different funding sources to house like one family. So I'll give you one example of a mom and her toddler who were discovered in an encampment in kind of the Nolita area along the creeks. And it was Memorial Day weekend, I remember, because it was Friday after 5 p.m. when we came across them and said, this is not okay. We need to get these folks into with a roof over their head. The baby, I think she was 2 years old. She needed diapers, she needed fresh pajamas, they needed meals, and all the offices are closed down Friday evening for a holiday weekend. But we were fortunate to call on a lot of our partners, and as she rode her bike to one of the non-congregate shelters in town, we were able to stop by Target and get diapers and get clothing, get pajamas, and make sure that their needs were taken care of throughout the weekend. I think they ended up at Transition House, the the following week and connected with social services. But it took, I think, 4 different funding sources to get us through the weekend to get their basic needs met. And that's something that we're continuing to struggle with. But we have a lot of great team members at the county, but also at our cities and our partner jurisdictions and agencies who are saying, okay, we can put in, $500, or we can put in a couple $100,000 to make sure that those needs are being met. Our county is also really good about going after competitive funding sources. So I want to talk about a couple of those great successes. And one is thanks to Jet Black Mertz, who wrote the successful grant application for our Youth Homeless Demonstration Program. And this is bringing in millions of dollars a year to end youth homelessness in our county. And this is huge. So just thank you, Jet, for making that possible, and for all the other partners who are a big part of it. We also, the county partnered with the cities throughout the county to apply for state encampment resolution funds to address encampments that are along our transit corridor. So that included working with Union Pacific and Caltrans. And part of that funding is actually covering the costs of La Posada interim housing, which is also a huge win. I know that I was really overwhelmed last week listening to the public comment and reading the public comment that came in support of this. For folks who aren't familiar, this is interim housing, dozens of units that will be right where encampments are right now, between Goleta and Santa Barbara in the unincorporated area. And it will move people inside, because what we have right now is it's not safe, it's not healthy, it's really not as structured when people are outside. And this brings them inside and provides health and safety measures. So we're really excited and just want to really appreciate the public for coming out and supporting that. And it really will provide a dignified bridge for folks to move from unsheltered homelessness into permanent housing. And that's a partnership with Dignity Moves, which is private philanthropic dollars, and in partnership with Good Samaritan Shelter to make that happen. A couple of other successes last year, our system-wide housed over 1,000 people. So over 1,000 people who are unhoused moved into permanent housing. And we also were able to get 100 new permanent housing units in the pipeline. But what we're faced with is fair market rent, $2,200 for a unit, for a studio unit in our community. So if you haven't looked for housing recently, that's how much it costs for a studio unit. And it's a huge challenge. So we're continuing to try to identify rental units and work with our permanent affordable housing developers. Our county Board of Supervisors dedicated a third of their ARPA funds, or their American Rescue Plan Act recovery funds, to housing and homelessness, and that has supported a lot of our successful efforts, expansion in street outreach, supporting Rainbow Village, which is interim housing up in Lompoc, supported Buena Tierra, the permanent housing through Homekey and the city of Goleta and the County Housing Authority. I want to brag a lot about the county, because I think they've just done a great job with that investment, and just huge kudos to partners like the city of Goleta. But I do want to remind us all that really it's not, unsheltered homelessness is not safe. It's not healthy for anybody. And we saw that also, to jog everybody's memory, back to January of this year, when we were all again told to stay in our homes where it was safe, where there hopefully was not flooding in our homes. Our unhoused folks were faced with gathering their belongings in the middle of the night to get away from rainstorms. And the county partnered with Good Samaritan Shelter, with the Freedom Warming Centers, with the outreach teams, to make sure that we were transporting people from riverbeds into these pop-up warming centers that we had 24/7 through an incredibly rainy, stormy weekend. And that was really an all hands on deck. Actually, I think the library let us borrow chairs for the weekend. So it was really, really all hands on deck. But that also showed us that there were any one of those days, there were between 100 and 150 people who wanted to come inside. So we often hear people say, well, they want to be outside, they like this lifestyle. Nobody wants to be unsheltered. They all want safety, security, they want their basic needs met. And we were able to do that, and we showed that through that weekend. So I want to leave you with just a few things that you can do to help, because I think that's part of tonight's discussion. Keep showing up to public comment. The next community meeting that's coming up is May 30th for La Posada. And the neighbors who are opposed to it will come out. So we need people who support it, especially people who are familiar with the successful projects like Dignity Moves in downtown Santa Barbara. We need everybody to come out and support that. You can.
Could you give us the time and place?
Yes, it's at the Living Faith Church, I think 6 p.m. on May 30th. And SB Act is really great about sending out that kind of information and talking points, so I'm sure that they'll send it out as well. You can show up to public comment and request policy changes, especially anything that will incentivize development of permanent affordable housing, whether that's funding or policy changes. You can also donate to the incredible people who are doing this frontline work, some of who you will hear from tonight, but a lot of our agencies are the ones who are out in the riverbeds, talking with people. They're working with the library and other social service providers. You can donate to them so that they can pay their staff a living wage, so that they can also live here, and they can continue to do the work that they're doing. And really something that doesn't cost anything, though, is as you're walking by somebody who is unhoused, smile, nod, say hello, get to know people's names, build that connection. That's something that really brightens my day. I know that my buddy who sleeps right next to where I park my car every day on the way into the office is always going to be there to greet me, and I do the same thing. So just say hello to our unhoused community members and get to know them and get to know their stories. And then you get to watch really amazing things like their journey to interim housing, whether it's at Transition House or at Dignity Moves, and then into permanent housing, like with the Housing Authority. So I think that covers it. Thank you.
I'm going to invite up Kathleen Boschke from Transition House, who has been the executive director there for a number of years, and we're going to discuss a topic related to homelessness that isn't always at the forefront of our minds, which is families with children experiencing homelessness and all of the challenges and issues surrounding that. So, how is the current housing crisis impacting local families with children, and what steps are being taken to support unhoused families locally, and what more can be done?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today, giving me a chance to talk about Transition House. Many of you have been supporters of Transition House for years, even decades, and you can probably talk as well as I can about what the agency does. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about Transition House in case you're not real familiar with it. And so Transition House is a homeless shelter and a permanent affordable housing developer serving families with children from the South Coast area. The primary reason that families become homeless is poverty. Our program provides intensive anti-poverty case management and career development services, along with an array of children's programs designed to help arrest the cycle of generational poverty. And we work with parents to come up with achievable housing plans, including increasing their income, learning how to spend their money wisely, and identifying what the family can afford for housing. We serve about 125 families each year in our shelter and housing programs, and because we serve families, about 60% of our clientele are under the age of 18. We're the only open shelter location in South County serving families, except for Domestic Violence Solutions closed shelter for victims of domestic violence. And we rely on hundreds of community members and groups of people to help us keep our shelter running smoothly every year. So you may not know that 90% of the families on average that are in Transition House are working. Although many have lost everything and they need the time to dig out their way out of the economic hole they've landed in. They need time to save money to move into housing. They might also need to pay back debts and address issues they couldn't afford to deal with while they were becoming homeless, like medical issues, clothing for their children, securing reliable transportation, getting counseling, and other things. Many families stay in our shelter for up to 6 months because it takes time to put back together the pieces of their lives. Homelessness is much, much more complex for families. course, the reason for family homelessness in our area mirrors the economic realities across the country, and that is for decades, wages haven't kept pace with the cost of housing. In addition, the development of affordable housing has not kept pace with the need, and income inequality has reached record levels. When the average cost of a two-bedroom apartment in the Santa Barbara area skyrocketed to $3,700 in 2022, up over $900 from the prior year, low-income wage earners were completely priced out of the rental market. And that's what we were dealing with at Transition House and trying to help people get back into housing. High rents, of course, are the result of high costs for housing sales. Hayes Commercial Realty, which is a local realtor company, commercial realtor, recently reported that the unit cost of an apartment in recent sales locally rose from $327,000 to $503,000 in just 5 years. So, if I'm a landlord and I buy an apartment building with a 30-year mortgage, each apartment is going to cost me $3,000 a month in mortgage payments alone. So, of course, I'm not going to be able to charge less rent. And that's a problem that we have here. So despite high housing costs, though, Transition House is still able to place over 70% of our shelter families into permanent housing situations. But many of those situations now are shared housing. About 50% of the families that moved out of Transition House into housing were into shared housing situations last year. Another 15% moved into subsidized housing, and of course those units are really hard to come by, especially with the high cost of housing now. Who's going to leave a subsidized unit if they don't have to? We also see many families working 2 jobs to afford housing, which could have enormous consequences in the long run for their children. Finally, those who can relocate to other areas, and last year about 30% of the families we served left the South County area entirely. Well, ultimately, that might be the best solution for many families. Remember that I mentioned that 90% of our families are working. What will it do to our service-based economy if more low-income wage earners leave? I don't know how this will change or what to do. I run a social service agency. And, many social service agencies who are dealing with the homeless are now being called upon to help solve problems that are so out of our scope of experience, economic problems that have been decades in the making. But in any case, Transition House is trying to do that, and we're committed to carrying on our program, continuing to deliver our anti-poverty services, because they're proven successful, and they have been for the almost 4 decades we've been in business, providing the tools families need to manage their finances and keep a stable home. We'll also continue to develop affordable housing, and thus far our agency has built 39 units of housing, and we're hoping to develop more. So the question, I'm finally getting to your question, what can you do to support local or to address this issue, and that is to support local agencies like Transition House and other groups that are working to address homelessness by volunteering or donating. And I think educating yourself about this issue, like you're doing tonight, is really important. I'm going to compete with the train here, I think. And of course, we need political will on a national level and a local level to attack the housing crisis, which is happening across the country. It's just particularly terrible here in Santa Barbara. And I very much appreciate Lucille's final comments, and my final comments were similar. And that is that, I've learned in my work in this field for the last 30 years that there's an enormous prejudice against poor people. And that prejudice is the reason why we can't get more done in this country. They don't have the same rights that housed people have. And so I think the most important thing that you can do today is to remember the humanity of anyone who's unhoused and acknowledge them if you see them. It's very important. So thanks very much for having me here tonight.
Thank you. So next we're going to invite up Jeff Gaddis of Dignity Moves, who has a long, illustrious career, and I know many of you are going to have questions for him because you're all excited about the Dignity Moves project. So with that, I'm just going to dive right in. How has the Dignity Moves Tiny Homes project addressed the immediate needs of people living on the streets in our community, and how can we scale it to provide transition housing for more people experiencing homelessness to provide that equitable pathway to housing?
Yeah, she got it. Thank you, everybody. It's nice to be here. Well, I would start with wanting to really honor the unsheltered women of this community. Because when I first started the project, it was me in an empty parking lot on my own, having to go out in the streets and start to build trust with the people who are unsheltered in our community. Because they had lost trust in us, right? For real reasons that we have to honor and we have to hear, we have to validate. I'm a social justice professor. That's my graduate and postdoctorate work is in social justice and oppression. So I look at this all through the lens of oppression, and that these are symptoms, unsheltered people are symptoms of our culture, right? They have lived experiences, and it's, again, the there for the grace of God go I. And I come into this space humble and present, but when I was thinking about how was I going to do this and get people to trust enough to come in when it was just a parking lot. And I started to talk to the women of this community that were unsheltered, and somehow they trusted me, which is an honor. It is an honor of a lifetime that they would trust me, and they would walk the streets with me day and night and believe in me that I was someone that could help them and help the people they cared about. So it was the belief that we could actually make a difference in their lives, which is the first real thing that would tell you that it works. That they needed to believe. They needed to believe in a place that actually cared about them and wanted to help them. And that was my central mission, and remains my central mission in overseeing the project. And over time, they would call me. Everybody has my cell number in this, every unsheltered person has my cell number in this community. And over time, I would get texts day and night, I found her, I found him, would you come and meet them? And I would get up, whatever time of day or night it was, and I'd go out there and I'd meet them. And I'd sit in the parks, Alameda Park, I'd sit at the bench at the museum. I would sit next to them, and a woman would come sit next to me, and they would see other people who were mistrusting, would see that woman with me talking to me, and they would scoot closer to me and listen and talk. And I would ask them, what do you want? What do you need? How would this work for you? And they told me. And so we built what they needed. And I always say to everybody, I'm building places I needed on the worst day of my life. When I'm hiring people to do that work, I'm saying, I'm looking at that person in the eyes and going, you're the eyes that I wanted looking at me on the worst day of my life. That cared about me, that saw me, that didn't judge me. And so we built the programming around that. And I have some of my colleagues here who I love, who we do this work together every day, and we give our hearts and our minds to it every day. So the first real difference it made was the trust, and then maintaining the trust, validating them, hearing them. This community is filled with amazing people. I came back here because I believe you can build proof of concept models in this community. It's a small, big city, right? With a lot of people who care. And that little parking lot has now made a difference, not only in Santa Barbara County, but around the country. I've had people as far as Africa come to tour with me and see it. And when they come on, what they say is, wow, they'll use the word vibe. When I lived in Ojai, they gave me the title, the Guardian of the Vibe. That's the coolest title I ever got. But it is the vibe. It's just a chill, safe place to be. And again, that is the biggest difference you can make. It's creating a safe place for people to be. In my own doctorate, that's what I studied, how to create safe and healing spaces. And we stripped away a lot of the rules, right? The rules. We started to talk about, I know that you can live together. I know that you can do this. And when I had the first community meeting with them, I said to them, they were all in that space with us. It was built. It was our first time together. And I said, there are so many people in this community who don't believe you can do this because of where it is and who you are. But I don't believe that. And if you can prove them wrong, you will save thousands of lives, and we will build these all over the country. And they bought in, and they did it, and they took it over. And I just stepped back and said, go. When there are conflicts in that space, I say to them, you know what to do, you know how to take care of each other. There's accountability in that space, and accountability is a big part of this, right? Accountability, but it's accountability to each other. Accountability doesn't go one way, it goes back and forth. But that parking lot is not only a testament to the unsheltered women of this community, it's a testament to us, because I didn't do this just for the unsheltered, I did this for us. But I felt if we could do this and get people to believe that it would have a healing effect on this community, and people could believe that we could do this. So it's that belief that creates the scalability, right? We have to see something done. When we talk about NIMBY, I don't use the term NIMBY. I think it's just a resistance to something you haven't seen work before. You have to see it work in order to believe. It's not just talking about this stuff, it's actually doing the work of building community and creating and sustaining community. And so for me, the concerns I have about scalability is obviously staffing. But the answer is to staffing, in my mind, is to teach the people that we bring into these spaces to run these spaces. And that's what we're doing there. It is a peer-driven model. Amy Farrell Weiss out of San Francisco, who I've gotten close to, built a beautiful resident steward model. It's under stfrancischallenge.org. You should look at it. But it is the answer to me to the future about people coming into this space. If you create value, I built hotel companies, ran high-rise buildings, doing the same stuff. It applies across the board, and no matter where community is. But if you build something of value where people feel they are cared about, they will fight for it. And they will duplicate it, and they will take it to other places and do it again and again. So this is really a testament to the human spirit, the good in us, the decency in us. I'm 61 years old, and I am so proud that I am not cynical. That feels like my greatest accomplishment. But I'm not cynical because things like that happen. That happened because of us. And now it's time to build more of them. But do it in this way. Do it in this way that we believe in each other. We believe in the good. That is the healing force of that space, is we believe in the people in that space, that they can do the right thing, that they want a helping hand, but a real helping hand, a kind hand, eyes that look at you without judgment, right? And so it's a blessing to stand here and talk about. I've been quiet, I've been dialed down, I've been in the trenches, I haven't wanted to come out. People have tried to drag me out. I'm like, no, I got work to do. And it's also because I'm accountable to them. For me, it's always been about them. Those of us who do the work, we know. I'm looking at you right now, yeah, we know that it's about them. But being about them is about us too. I mean, I heal every day, over and over and over again, thanks to them. So it's the greatest gift of a lifetime to live in this community, to be with you, and to do this work. Thank you.
So I have Dale Azam from the Housing Authority of Santa Barbara, who is the Director of Real Estate and Technology at the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara. And so the question that we have for you is, how do housing authority projects support affordable housing options in our community, and what policies can support the housing authority's ability to provide more affordable housing units?
Great. Thanks a lot. I'm what stands between you and dinner, so you can bet I'm going to be pretty brief. Thanks a lot for having us. It's a great group of speakers we've heard from tonight. So in answer to the question, how can the Housing Authority support affordable housing? The Housing Authority was formed a little over 50 years ago and it was focused initially just on federal public housing. Okay, sure. Sorry, I'm going to be louder. So it's focused initially as federal public housing, and that obviously means low income. In the ensuing years, we've broadened out, and our portfolio now covers everything from that up to what we call essential workforce, middle income, which, for our definition is up to 160% of area median income. So just to give you a flavor of the range of what we do, I'm going to just tell you about 4 active developments we have going right now. First of all, Veracruz Village, 116 East Coda, 29 units, and it's going to be for formerly homeless. It's a tax credit project, low income. We were just talking about, we really hope, if it all works, that we're going to have a good chunk of residents that come out of Dignity Moves and into our permanent supportive housing. So that would be to Jeff's point about proof of concept, we would love to see that happen. 821 State Street is our other actively under construction project right now. This was a donation from a private developer. And this one is going to be focused, it's 14 units. It's the former Sur Taub's place. Sorry, we will not have any kitchen supplies there. But we're going to continue to have a commercial space in the front. And then there's going to be 14 units in the back and upstairs. 10 of those are going to be technically unrestricted. So to us, that means we're going to focus on our essential workforce up to 160% area median income. Wow, that guy's getting really close. Okay. One unit is going to be long-term restricted to moderate income, and then three units are going to be restricted to low income. So I think that's going to be a nice project to prove you can actually do housing in downtown Santa Barbara. You can do an adaptive reuse. It's not a big one, but at least we can show that it can be done. Now, the other 2 that I'm going to mention are not under construction. They're hopefully going to break ground next year. Bella Vista is at 200 North La Cumbre. It's going to be a low-income family project, 48 units. And the other one that I know you're all familiar with, Jacaranda Court, is the current Carrillo Castillo commuter lot. And that one is going to be focused primarily on moderate and middle income. That land obviously is owned by the city, and the city deciders said that's what they wanted at that location. We are going to have 10% low income as well, which is going to be about 7 units. So I want to quote from data that was provided by the intrepid Lisa Carlos in an email earlier today. Because that sounds like, oh, well, there's a lot going on, right, in affordable space. That sounds pretty good. Lisa analyzed all of the developments that have been summarized in Sightline and other places recently. And basically, if you look at all of the developments in the city of Santa Barbara right now, there's about 1,864 units that are in the planning stages or underway. Out of those 1,864, she estimates, and it looks like based on pretty good assumptions, about 20% of those are going to be affordable, meaning up to 120% area median income. Basically, what it means is up to somebody who makes 120% of area median income. Area median income in Santa Barbara right now is about $100,000. And then you, in order to afford it, you pay 30% of your income towards that.
So, yeah, low income is area median income for a single person is $78,000. Yeah, most of our teachers, most of our essential workers, nurses, people who work in retail, hospitality, nonprofit workers.
The people that make this
That's right.
work.
That's right.
So,
Afford to live here.
so she's made my point. So, we think, oh, wow, we've got all these affordable projects. Well, guess what? The projects we have are only going to be providing housing for people that can afford it above that. And if you look at the regional housing needs allocation that the state gives us, starting this year for the next 8 years, we need 5,000 affordable units, and we have 320. So I mean, what can we do? And this is the housing authority's had a drumbeat about this lately, and that is we used to have a dedicated funding source, and it was called the redevelopment agencies, and the city and the housing authority in collaboration would be able to, the city would fund acquisitions of properties, and we could do developments. And when RDA went away, we lost that funding source. So what we really need is a dedicated funding source again. And, that's what we need. I think if all of the people here, if you can assist us with that, we would really appreciate it. The policies, like things like you can get more density if you do affordable, or you can do, something like that. Streamlined processing, that will help, but it's not going to make the difference. What's going to make the difference is funding, and if we can get funding, we can buy properties and we can develop more units. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Thanks.
And so we want to give you all we've heard some tangible items that you all can take out into the community and into your daily lives. So just some ideas for actions that you can take forward. You can write a letter to the editor, and there's some templates that we've provided on those handouts, and personalize them. Share what you've learned and what's most important to you, and get engaged in that way. You can also learn about this with a curated book list. There's a QR code for a reading list, all available at your public library. You can become a member of Democratic Women and help elect leaders who are working towards ending this housing crisis. Yeah. We're 100% volunteer run, and we, connect with fellow Democrats who share your values. There's volunteer opportunities and support candidates running for office, meet endorsed candidates, and then these educational events. There's lots of ways to get involved. And then we heard some other ideas from our speakers today. Recognize the humanity of the people that are living unsheltered on our streets. Say hi to them, get to know them, their stories, because oftentimes they're one stroke of bad luck away from you or somebody that you love. Get involved. Speak at City Council and County Board of Supervisors in support of projects that you find value in. There's lots of different ways to get involved.